Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, we've known for some time that the EU's decision, essentially, to wean themselves away from Russian energy imports,
Of affordable Russian energy.
affordable Russian energy imports, has been a bonanza for the United States, because the United States has very helpfully stepped up to the plate to replace Russian energy with its own liquefied natural gas, of course, which is much more expensive than all the gas and oil that Europe was getting from Russia. But the Biden administration,
In its
concerned
infinite wisdom.
in its infinite wisdom, concerned about losing support from its base, particularly over its policies in Gaza, has decided to restrict the granting of export licenses for liquefied natural gas. And this has naturally caused some consternation in Europe. I thought, hey, I thought we were getting all this LNG in perpetuity to replace.
At a premium also.
Yeah, but Biden said, no, no, no. I have to pay attention to the environmentalists, because the environmentalists aren't happy with LNG, because although it emits fewer less CO2 than the normal fossil fuels, it still nonetheless emits CO2, and so the environmentalists have been very unhappy, and so Biden decided to placate them. And so then, if you look at the media, and the media are in a bit of a tiz about this, because although they're sympathetic to Biden, oh, great, nice, look at how green the Biden administration is. They are raising questions. What about Putin? Aren't we supposed to be fighting Putin? How is this helping us in our fight with Putin if it's allowing the Europeans to be in the lurch? So here is the first off, the New York Times on this subject. And here's the headline: Biden administration pauses approvals of new gas exports. And then the president said the government would analyze impacts on climate, the economy, and national security before approving new projects.
And these projects are very, very expensive, and they're very long term. It's not something you said. It's not a lemonade stand. Let's put it that way.
Right. That's right. And it said President Biden paused the permitting process for new liquefied natural gas export facilities in order to analyze their impact on climate change, the economy, and national security. And then the Biden said in a statement, in every corner of the country and the world, people are suffering the devastating toll of climate change. This pause on new LNG approvals sees the climate crisis for what it is, the existential threat of our time. Huh.
Well, George, I mean, analyze their impact on climate change, the economy, and national security. Well, whose climate change, whose economy, and whose national security? Kind of left unsaid.
Right. It's always very strange when they talk about this as the existential threat of our time. I mean, you've got you're provoking a possible world war in Ukraine. You've got this crisis in the Middle East, whether it's in Gaza, in the Red Sea, maybe a confrontation with Iran, and you've decided that this is the existential threat of our time. I remember he said a year ago about we're closer to nuclear Armageddon than at any time since the Cuban Missile Crisis. So apparently, climate change is this existential threat. Then he goes on. The country has 7 terminals with another 5 approved facilities under construction. An additional 17 projects have been seeking permits. The move comes a month after the United States joined nearly 200 nations at a UN climate summit in promising to transition away from fossil fuels. The oil and gas industry denounced the decision as a, quote, win for Russia and a loss for American allies. They know their audience. You know, these the oil and gas
Russia, what about Russia?
Russia, and argued that the gas shipments to Europe and Asia that have soared since Russia's invasion of Ukraine are helping to displace coal. And then goes on, Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican of Louisiana, whose state is home to multiple gas export terminals, said in a statement that Putin must have designed the strategy. But this week, and this is very funny, this week, 100 European lawmakers wrote to Mr. Biden saying they would welcome a pause. So I look at these 100 European lawmakers, they are all Greens. They're all belong to Green parties. So it's like, it's not like, oh, well, there's 100 diverse, somebody from the national.
No, I'm sure all 100 of them had of scholarships and fellowships in the United States at one time.
I'm
like
pretty sure. The Greens generally do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then this is the letter from 60 parliamentarians. I don't know. Well, that's a 60. I don't know why the time said 100, but okay. And then it says, we are concerned that a false depiction of European energy needs is now being used as an excuse by the fossil fuel industry and their allies to dramatically expand US LNG exports to the global market. Notice how little they care about, their own people. We're worried about this expansion of LNG exports to Europe.
Essentially, is that they're essentially agreeing to be wearing burlap clothing and to go barefoot. I mean, right. This is what they're saying.
Right. Okay. That's right.
We don't believe in a standard of a quality of life and standard of living.
No, definitely no. Definitely no. They really do dislike their own country and their own peoples. I mean, they really want to totally impoverish them, deindustrialize them, and just render them completely.
As you and I have said before, the Morgenthau plan. I think
it is the Morgenthau.
It's 19. Was it 1944 or 43?
Yeah, he was doing it during the war. He was crafting it.
The war, and it was basically the deindustrialization and demodernization of Germany after the war. Right. Well, that plan was just put on hold because now they're implementing it now.
Exactly. Europe should not be used as an excuse to expand LNG exports that threaten our shared climate and have dire impacts on US communities. Don't whatever you do, expand your LNG exports to Europe. It kind of reminds me a little bit of those countries that demand sanctions on their own countries, because, oh, well, we hate our political leaders. Can you please impose sanctions?
Oh, it's like Guaido and the fake Syrian opposition, fake Belarusian opposition.
That's right, exactly. Tikhanovskaya,
the woman that only George can pronounce. Okay.
Yeah, Tikhanovskaya. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, please impose sanctions on our country, and then we'll win an election because people love sanctions on them. Europe's current consumption of fossil gas is already being met under current import levels and with existing infrastructure. So we don't need no stinking LNG. Looking ahead and enshrined in several EU policies, European fossil gas demand is set to structurally decline as the continent continues to invest in energy efficiency, renewable energy, and to electrify its power, buildings, and industrial sectors. So in the meantime, you have the farmers protesting everywhere because of their fuel costs, demanding fuel subsidies, demanding a cut on the tax on diesel. But apparently everything is hunky dory.
Well, I don't see any efficiencies in any of this.
I don't see any.
I've never seen one example. That's right. Example of efficiency here.
No, none. So this is then. Again, we're now back to the New York Times. So the New York Times, this is another article. Worries in Europe over the White House move to delay gas terminals. They're worried. I always love it when the Europeans are worried. I thought the Biden administration was our friend. We thought that they're on our side. It's Trump. It's Trump that we hate. Trump is the bad guy. It's Biden's, is a good guy. Trump, who actually says, hey, drill, baby, drill. Just simply, wherever if there's a hole in the ground, let's get the oil gushing out of it. And so, but no, it's this Biden is the one.
Well, also, this is, this is kind of on the margins, but I mean, he's in deep trouble with his failed Ukraine policy. He's in deep trouble with backing Israel and its onslaught on Gaza. So he's looking for a marginal win here
Right.
because, I mean, his base is fraying,
Right.
and this is a pitch to grab some of them back.
Right.
I mean, when you put genocide on the ballot, I mean, I don't know what you can do to convince people to come back, but these are liberals. So, I mean,
Right.
they play mental gymnastics in their head all of the time. Okay.
And they will, because what they're going to do is, of course, hey, if you don't vote for Biden, you don't vote for Genocide Joe, you're going to get Trump. And that may or may not work. I mean, we don't know. But
well, we have to make a separate video on this, but I tend to think more and more people are just not going to vote. But that's a subject for another time.
Right. Right. So it says the Biden administration decision to review new liquefied natural gas projects for their impact on climate change could be a headache for overseas buyers.
Headache.
It's a bit of a headache.
Yeah. Can you give me an aspirin, George?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that. Exactly. Hey, can I have an aspirin, please? The Biden administration's decision to delay approval of new liquefied natural gas terminals in the United States has been hailed as a major victory for environmental advocacy groups, but it is creating unease outside the United States about future energy supply.
Well, unease. Here we go again with these words. So you told us, 2 years ago that don't buy Russian natural gas, buy our natural gas, and then 2 years later you're throwing us off a cliff.
Yes,
I mean that's the unease.
Unease. Yes, but what I find surprising is why people should find it surprising. And what did you think the Americans were going to do? I mean, that's what they do. I mean, they'll say, yeah, you can, we'll take care of you. We'll give you all the LNG you need. And then 2 years later, they decide, nah, I don't think so. Environment.
It's the kind of the American international response to broken promises. You got to understand, this is the new reality. It's just the thing. It's just the thing. Okay. Yeah. Which of course has no substance to it whatsoever. Basically, it's a middle finger. Okay.
Exactly. I think U.S. allies and trade partners will have some concerns about this.
Concerns.
Concerns.
We have some concerns here.
We have concerns.
Okay.
Because in the past 2 years, U.S. LNG exports have been a real boon to global energy security, said Ben Cahill, a senior fellow at the Energy Security and Climate Change Program at CSIS. And then goes on, the Biden administration's move to pause the permitting process for new liquefied natural gas export facilities is not expected to have an impact on global supplies soon. But of course, it always has an impact, because the moment people know that you're cutting it off, it has a huge impact on prices. I mean, we're not going to run out tomorrow, but it already figures into everybody's calculation, and therefore it figures into prices.
And energy strategies. Okay, yes. Looking elsewhere and,
right.
and so forth and
right.
and onward. But I mean, it not expected to have and for Europe, it will have an immediate impact.
It will have an immediate, of course it will. But it could create uncertainty, especially in Europe, which has only recently weathered a major energy shock after Russia's invasion of Ukraine almost 2 years ago. Well,
look at that sentence. Just look at that, everybody. I'm sorry, you go first, George.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, yeah, but it could create uncertainty, especially in Europe, which has only recently weathered a major energy shock. Well, who decided on the shock? It wasn't the Russians that did it. It was the Americans that forced the Europeans to go down this path. There's no agency in this sentence, is there?
No.
There's no sense of causality here.
No.
This is, regime propaganda.
God. Exactly. And there's no mention about the Nord Stream pipelines. You're like, well, what happened there? I mean, the Nord Stream, which mysteriously just blew up. Like again, it
Mhm.
just no agency, just blew up one fine day.
And we'll
Um,
probably never know
we'll
why.
never know.
No.
So, but again, that doesn't even mention. Hey, well, that could have been a nice source of supply for Europe's energy needs. No, uh, over the last 2 years, an enormous surge in liquefied gas exports from the United States helped Europe largely replace flows of natural gas from Russia, which had been Europe's mainstay supplier in the fuel. But again, the suggestion is that Russia cut off the gas. Russia never cut off the gas. I mean, there's still gas coming from
There's still
Russia.
gas going across Ukraine, everyone.
I go across Ukraine. Yeah.
I don't think they're going to renew the contract. I think it's 2025, okay? Or 2025. But as we speak, gas is flowing across a war zone.
That's right. That's right. Um, and according to KPLER, a research firm, U.S. gas exports to Europe more than doubled from 2021 to 2022 to about 52 million metric tons, and then increased modestly in 2023. These shipments have been key in stopping Russia from forcing Europe down on its knees with using energy as a geopolitical weapon.
How did that get past any editor, George? That it's just
They always do this.
this
It's
is
like,
absurd. This is such an absurd statement. Okay.
absolutely. But it's like I mean, when we were in that earlier video, we talked about with always that first line, Viktor Orban, Putin's best friend in Europe. You always have to put this in. Oh, Russia is using energy as a geopolitical weapon. Never did that. Never, absolutely
The
never has
United
never
States
done that.
The United States is using energy as a political weapon against its European allies.
Yes,
That's the reality.
that's right, exactly. The United States export of liquefied natural gas have grown from almost scratch in recent years. Huh. That's interesting. It's grown from scratch and it's now become very a lucrative business, which coincided with the war. It is now the world's largest LNG exporter, with more than 60% going to Europe last year. After the invasion of Ukraine, European countries, including Germany, the Netherlands, and Greece, scrambled to build new LNG terminals and lock up supply deals with the United States.
Meanwhile, no mention of Nord Stream.
No mention of Nord Stream, just vanished. And the crisis that this has caused in Europe, I mean, we see it. I mean, these farmers, which with their manure, they're bringing manure to express their views on the European politicians. It hasn't been the smooth transition to this new source of energy. Doubts regarding the quote stability unquote of liquefied gas supplies from the United States could put such plans at risk,
You think?
raising concerns of potential further price volatility. Huh. I did not think of that.
These people are probably paid so much money to say this. Isn't it amazing?
Price volatility. Wow. Um, and then Germany's economy ministry said Friday that it was monitoring the situation in the United States, quote, closely, unquote, but
As the good
declined to.
Germans always do these days.
Yeah, very closely. Yeah, well, yes. I wonder if Schultz is going to come to Washington again. Over his
He
one
is.
of
He's
his.
scheduled. No, he is scheduled.
He is
Very
scheduled.
soon.
Yeah, like he comes for a few hours without accompanying press. He doesn't give a press conference.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those things. I hope Gaglers will understand it. He might have to bring his own chair. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's right. The security of the gas supply remains stable, the ministry said through a spokeswoman, adding that Germany now receives most of its natural gas from Norway. Yeah, but what about everyone else? And also, I mean, is that an infinite, indefinite supply? You can, whether you can just go on relying on Norway. Germany consumes a lot of gas. To be clear, in making this move, the Biden administration seems unlikely to jeopardize supplies to customers outside the United States this year or anytime soon. But there you go again. I mean, they've already had these people saying, yeah, but it already affects everyone. Everyone's planning and the price volatility. I mean, no one said it's going to run out tomorrow and there's not going to be any more gas. But it's a big deal when people say, hey, we're not going to keep providing it for you. The decision does not apply to current exports, and analysts say it will not stop a group of new LNG projects that have already been approved and are under construction. These are likely to substantially boost the capacity of the United States to export gas in the coming years. And then analysts say that what may unsettle allies, especially in Europe, is the message that they may no longer be able to count so firmly on supplies from the United States in coming years, so firmly. So, but so when I say they're no longer be able to count on supplies, but they have to know so firmly. So
Well,
it's not doesn't sound too bad.
in energy markets, the rule of thumb, people, can go, go on and on about the price of a barrel of oil. And if you're on the spot market, it obviously makes a difference. But energy experts, people that really know what they're talking about, what they want most, George, is stable supply. That's all that matters,
right,
because economies can adjust to a price, okay?
Right.
And it can be painful if you're at the lower end. But what's most important is a stable supply, okay?
Stable supply.
And this is not addressing that, okay? The price you can work out, you can pass it on to the consumer,
right,
okay? But if there's no sustainable, predictable supply, then you're really a creek with you know what, okay?
No, that's exactly right. I mean, the energy industry is based on long-term investments. It's not short-term, and so therefore they, oh well, we can get it from Saudi Arabia or somewhere. Well, no, I mean it isn't there. Saudi Arabia's already planned.
I've already sold it years in advance.
Exactly, exactly. So I mean, we talked about this many times before. It's all based on long-term contracts. It's not based on somehow, well, we'll get it from somewhere, like you go to a supermarket and you buy a different box of cereals. And then what this really highlights for Europe is you are running out of options. And Henning Gloystein, Director for Energy and Climate Change at Eurasia Group. While Russia does supply Europe with liquefied natural gas now, European leaders want to reduce those flows. The Eastern Mediterranean looks doubtful as a major source in the future because of the conflict between Israel and Hamas. Aside from the United States, the other likely major producer of additional LNG is Qatar, which is a tiny Middle Eastern emirate. Yeah. So Mr. Gloystein said LNG from the United States was particularly attractive for European buyers because the shipping distances from North America are relatively short, and the terms that American suppliers provide are much more flexible than those of most other sources.
Yeah, like if you have to go through the Red Sea.
Exactly. For instance, they usually allow a buyer to easily resell gas, whereas other gas buyers like Qatar often impose restrictions. The US is the one that matters. And then now this is from Foreign Policy. Why Biden's LNG pause has allies worried. But again, we have all of these articles we've been having for all these years about how Biden is this great leader of the alliance. He's kept this alliance together, and all European leaders dread. What do they dread most of all is the return of Trump. Trump and the instability that comes with Trump. And then Biden does this. And say, yeah, of course he was going to do this. I mean, what did you think he was going to do? And just like the British, oh, good, we have Biden, they still don't have that trade deal.
Yeah, because what this was all about, it wasn't about Western solidarity. It wasn't solidarity of NATO world. No, this is to punish Russia. If if you end up with the short end of the stick, well, that's
Sure.
shit happens. Okay,
that's right. Yeah, exactly. That's the only thing. And essentially, the U.S. policy has always been to weaken Europe, subordinate Europe. That's our idea. the goal is obviously, yes, to weaken Russia, to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia. But in the process, because the Europeans signed on to a policy that was obviously not in Europe's interest, Europe's interest is to have good relations with Russia. Europe signed on to this policy and has led to Europe's weakening and subordination. I mean, that's what happens if you don't pursue your own obvious interests. The Biden administration's pause on future approvals for the export of U.S. liquefied natural gas has enraged Republicans, spooked overseas allies that are increasingly reliant on affordable U.S. energy. It's not particularly affordable, and raised questions about the long-term future of the world's newest energy powerhouse. And it says, calling it, quote, a gift for Putin, Republicans on the House Energy Committee railed against the move, which they see as threatening to the security of U.S. allies.
Well, I'm not sure I understand the logic there. A gift to Putin. I mean, if Russia isn't going to be selling much natural gas to Europe, then what's the gift?
I don't get it either.
I don't get.
You're
I don't
absolutely right.
get the logic.
I don't.
I don't get that. I mean, if the Nord Stream pipelines were still in existence, and I guess I can see an argument there, but they don't exist, and they never will exist again. So I don't see what the gift is other than this being a bumper sticker.
I agree with you. I mean, other than, hey, if the Europeans are going to suffer, then that's a gift for Putin. But that's not really, Putin isn't thinking along those terms. The problem is the United States. The problem is not Europe. So the fact that Europeans might suffer because of high energy prices, that doesn't do much for Putin. So, and it said, then Biden's LNG export pause weakens global energy security and undercuts our efforts to help Europe reduce its reliance on Russian energy, as the committee said. It plans to hold a hearing next week to dissect the economic and security impacts of the pause. And then in parentheses, even some Democratic lawmakers have said that they plan to push Biden to reverse the pause, citing concerns over job impacts in energy producing states such as Pennsylvania. Despite heated reactions to the move, it's not clear that it will have such catastrophic impact. Oh, God. The pause only affects a handful of future projects, not the gusher of U.S. export capacity that is already baked in.
No, but then the person that's writing this doesn't really understand energy markets. George and I have already said this.
Exactly.
I mean, the stability of supply. So, you can, yeah, it won't have an impact next week or next month or maybe even next year. But countries can't, make these kind of short-term decisions. You have to make long-term decisions.
That's right.
It's a very, and this kind of infrastructure stuff is so expensive. Okay. And no investor, and this is all privately done. We're not getting, they could change the law next spring. Well, I'm not putting down $1 billion. No. You nuts?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly what they're thinking. You make these changes, just like they build all these LNG terminals. That's a lot of money that goes into that. And now they say, well, now we don't need it. So that was a complete waste. And with plenty of LNG export capacity coming online around the world, it's not even clear that there will be excessive unmet appetite for huge quantities of natural gas by the end of the decade. This is just talking points provided by the White House. Don't worry about anything, so they just repeat these talking points.
Yeah, but it's not. Don't worry, but it's my money.
Right.
I'm going to worry.
Right.
It's my money.
That's right.
You're making policy arbitrarily,
right.
Presumably for electioneering purposes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And then the focus of concern in Congress, what the pause could do to Europe's ability to replace its historic dependence on Russian energy, is one big question, with the war in Ukraine far from resolved. For decades.
Again, I mean, this is assuming everything is going to go back to normal, whatever that is. Okay. No, there's been a huge breach here. I mean, this article does not even approach what Russia's energy policy has been over the last 2 years. And the Russians are on the move bigly. Okay. The Russians are, they don't, They don't give a hoot what the Americans are going to do. They've already sent their message, what they're going to do, and there's no going back to it. So later days.
Right,
Okay,
right.
sorry.
No, I don't understand what Russia would gain out of going back to Europe and
No,
then
no.
and then start exporting energy again to Europe and then wait for another you know you know sanctions or whatever within 3 or 4 years. So it doesn't make any sense. For decades, before Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, Moscow was the biggest source of gas for Europe, but that became a toxic option with the onset of war. What does that mean, a toxic option? It wasn't a toxic
Who was
option.
it toxic? For whom was it toxic?
It's a cheap source of energy, and presumably, the Europeans were prospering because they had this cheap source of energy. So why this becomes a toxic option, and therefore they suddenly don't have a cheap source of energy anymore. And then lo and behold, industries are leaving Europe and going to the United States. Oh,
Or they have a domestically cheap LNG.
right, right, yes. You remember that time when Emmanuel Macron said that, oh, well, we're not getting a good deal from the Americans. We're paying 4 times as much for our energy as the Americans are. Yeah, and what do you conclude from that? Yeah, that's it.
Emmanuel, that was by design.
Um, Europe halved its imports of pipeline Russian gas in 2022 and halved them again in 2023. Much of the difference was made up by a jump of imports of US LNG, making Europe the biggest importer last year and making the United States the critical component of Europe's ability to withstand Russian economic pressure. There's no Russian economic.
There's no Russian economic pressure. It's reverse, but
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
George, Russia's sanctions on the United States and on the EU, they're really beginning to bite now.
They're beginning to bite. Yeah, yeah.
What an absurd thing to write.
I know. The concern over Europe's energy security and historical memories of Russian strong arming, overlook the dramatic.
Strong arming. It was the Germans that wanted the Nord Stream pipelines. It wasn't the Russians that suggested it. And it was the Germans, they pretty pleased for Nord Stream 2.
Right.
Okay.
Pretty pleased, yeah.
Because they liked the first one so much, and then they came around and said, maybe we go a little bit more, okay?
Right.
Okay.
That's
and
right.
and that was a much more private enterprise than the first one. The first one was state to state. So if you invested in the second one, well, you're out of pocket big time. Okay. So who's strong armed whom here?
Right. And what's so dishonest about the Europeans, particularly Merkel, is that they never acknowledge that they wanted this, that they were the ones who were pushing it. So, she just sort of, whenever she's asked, well, why did you sign on for Nord Stream 2? Well, it was like, the Russians pressed us and so on. She never acknowledged that it was you wanted this. And then she kind of walked away from this as if somehow she had no
Like everything
responsibility.
else she did.
Yeah.
Everything.
So, and again, Russia has been the most reliable source of energy for decades. It goes back to the communist times. I mean, I think it was 1969. I think the first natural gas deal was signed between West Germany and Russia. I mean, it's so, it's just, and always you deliver on time and exactly.
Well, with the exception when Ukraine refused to pay.
When Ukraine, exactly, that's right. Which is why, again, it was Merkel who wanted that. Hey, can we get around Ukraine? Wouldn't that be?
No, it was the Ruskies that wanted to do that. No, everyone, it was the Germans that wanted to do that.
Because
if you look at, I think it was Druzhba, the first one, the friendship pipeline, going back to 1969.
Right.
These pipelines, particularly after the Soviet Union came to an end, the pipelines that the Soviet Union built that went through what is now the former Soviet world ended up in other countries. For example, Ukraine. The Ukrainians didn't upkeep the pipes. They siphoned off gas. They stole it. They refused to pay. Russia all along was paying a transfer fee across Ukraine. They pocketed that. but the pipelines were going into disrepair and
Right,
everybody knew it. And so
right.
another reason, new pipelines where you wouldn't have to go through a third country that wouldn't take care of them.
Yeah,
Okay. Because that was what the Ukrainians did. It was just pure profit. They don't want to put one cent into upkeep. They're just going to squeeze as much money out of it as possible. And they're still doing it.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Um, Not only are imports from Russia down, but natural gas use as a whole is also down sharply by about 13% just
Well,
last year.
I wonder why, George, because you're in recession.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
No, they're trying to play a little green thing. Oh, yeah, I can see the word right there, green. Okay.
That's
Oh,
right.
it's
That's
because
right.
renewables. No,
Right.
the demand has collapsed because there is industrial growth is flat.
That's right.
That's why.
That's right. Yeah. And industries are shutting up shop and moving out. So yeah, there's a reduction in demand. At the same time, the Russia-driven energy crisis has jump-started Europe.
The
Uh,
Russian-driven energy crisis.
That's right. After years of dithering to move faster on its transition to clean and renewable technologies with huge growth in solar power and wind energy since the war began. But that's nothing. I mean, it's like this is
Yeah,
so
George, how many days of sunshine do you get in Hungary? And Hungary's kind of at the lower end of the
right,
latitude
exactly.
there.
And but many parts of Europe, you get no sunshine.
Nope.
I mean, Germany, much of northern Germany, you get no sunshine there. Much of northern Europe, you get very little sunshine. So this is just a fraud, that, oh, we got all these renewables. There's just no way at all that the renewables are going to replace fossil fuels anytime in the near future. So they go, look, there's been this growth of
As
renewables.
long as there is fossil fuel, it will be used.
Yeah,
Full
exactly.
stop,
Exactly.
everybody. Full stop.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. And then it says, for decades, Russia under Putin used the energy cudgel to cow Europe. It's like cow. Can you give an example of this? When did that happen? He hoped to do the same this time, expecting to freeze Ukraine and Europe into acceding to his territorial demands. But his own overreach in Ukraine and a robust response from Europe and alternative supplies such as the United States appears to have finally blunted his energy weapon, potentially removing one of the Kremlin's most powerful tools of economic statecraft. This at the time when there's massive protests throughout Europe, but apparently everything is great. I mean, it's this is Germany. Germany, they're going on strike. This is we have
Which is
striking
very
workers.
rare, everyone, because management and unions traditionally in the post-war period have basically had a pretty chummy relationship.
Yeah.
And in Germany stands out
Yeah,
in Europe for having that kind of relationship.
that's right. That's right. And
Well, I mean, George, go back. I'm sorry, if you can go
yeah,
back.
okay.
This look at the rhetoric appeared to have finally blunted his energy weapon,
Right.
potentially removing one of the Kremlin's most powerful tools of economic statecraft. No, if you don't want to buy the energy, then you can't be forced to buy it. You
Right,
blow up the
right,
pipelines, even if you wanted it now, you can't
right,
have it.
right.
And we've moved on. We've just
That's
moved on. You guys seem to keep talking about something which you wanted to have happen. Well, it has happened.
Well,
And you
yeah.
had your empty promises from your American friends that they would fill the gap. Well, they're not going to do it anymore. So you're screwed.
That's exactly right. It's very interesting when they write these things. You say, well, what is it you want? I mean, do you want Russian energy or you don't want Russian energy? Oh, Russia's using its energy as a weapon, so you don't want Russian energy. Okay, fine. Then get your energy from somewhere else. But it's like they're somehow blaming Russia for energy shortages, and then they say, but the last thing we want is to get our energy from Russia. Well, okay, well, so you don't want Russian energy, fine. Then rely on the Americans. Oh, but the Americans have their own agenda. We never know what the American agenda is at any particular time. So what do you want? Got to make up your mind. What do you want?
It's kind of like inviting your crazy uncle to Thanksgiving, and you know exactly how the conversation is going to go.
Right.
It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. I've never done anything wrong.
Right.
And it's like you have to sit through dinner for an hour, and then you have to wait for another year. And the Europeans are for the Russians look at the Europeans as a crazy uncle.
Right. No, that's right. So there it is. In it was wholly predictable that the United States would turn around and do something like this. And so you got these newspapers, magazines, which are basically in the tank with the Biden administration, but they're sort of realizing, hey, I thought we were all on the same team. I thought we were all trying to fight for Ukraine and against Putin, but apparently not really. But okay, well, no, it doesn't matter. I mean, no real problem. Yeah, we got all the renewables, and then we'll find some other way of doing it. We don't need any energy. But you can see that they can't quite make up their minds what they want to say.
Well, one of the obvious consequences of this is the supply and demand issue. So if there's going to be fewer export terminals made, the existing ones under license, they will have the same amount of natural gas, but of course they'll be able to export it at a much higher price because you're
Right.
limiting supply on the market.
Right.
So it's all for the environment and all that. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, right. Okay.
Right.
So these people that already have licenses for ongoing concerns, they're going to see their profits skyrocket. This is going to
Right.
be, okay, fine. You want to hurt the industry, but there'll be industry players that will
Right.
benefit from this. Okay.
Right.
I mean, there's so many different ways of looking at it that in the articles that you showed us here never examine.
No. 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 That's right. Um, it's interesting whole issue. And here is Biden, who decided, well, how do I placate all of my base, which is really, really very, very unhappy about the administration policy. They're happy with the Ukraine policy. There's no problem there, but they just don't like what's going on in Gaza. They said, oh, I'll throw them something. Oh, hey, environmental. Hey, look, I'm cracking down on fossil fuels, existential crisis of our time. And now, it's I'm not sure that that's going to make much of a difference to them. But I think he's going to cause a bit of a headache in Europe. But maybe they'll think, oh, well, but at least it's not Trump. So even though Trump is Mr. Energy, I mean, this is the guy
Well,
who's
the
going to give
way
you
the
give you energy. I mean, that's what he's about.
I don't know, George. I mean, the way the Biden administration has treated Europe, I have to wonder if there are people in the back of their minds saying, "Okay, Trump was a pest, but he wasn't Biden." Okay.
Right. Well,
I
that's
mean,
yeah.
everybody, if you really look at it, I mean, what Trump said and what Trump did vis-a-vis Europe, there's not a very good overlap, okay? Because he was hamstrung during his entire administration. I mean, what did he actually do? Okay. I
Right.
mean, it was Biden, build back better nonsense, that basically shafted European exports into America. Trump didn't do that.
Right. Right. No, you're absolutely right. He did that whole the Build Back Better, but the point is that Biden has done this thing with energy, which has really hurt Europe. Now Trump, did impose tariffs, um, but you can always live with tariffs. It's not such a huge um, issue. After all, you can impose your own tariffs. This, however, that's a serious business, and pushing Europe into a war that is obviously a disaster for Europe, and pushing the sanctions policy, which is obviously a disaster for Europe. And now you got a serious energy problem. That's a lot worse than they put an extra tariff on aluminum. And Biden hasn't taken off the tariffs, so it's not like Trump imposed the tariffs and then Biden removed the tariffs. So it's hard to see why you think, oh, well, thank God we have Biden. I mean, Trump obviously isn't on the same page in terms of this kind of liberal world outlook of Macron, Schultz, and the rest of them. But he was a lot better for Europe than Biden has been.
Yeah, I mean, and this worry about Trump coming back and all that, and you and I have discussed it. We had a German guest here. My my attitude is he just won't think about it. I mean, he's not going to wake up in the middle of the night and say, "How can I screw the Europeans even
Right.
more?" I don't think that's really
No.
his agenda. It's just going to be let them worry about their problems. I'm going to worry about my problems. Okay. And I think that at the very worst, it might be kind of a form of benign neglect. I don't know, but I mean, Biden policy after policy. I mean, where's the trade agreement with the UK, George?
No trade
Where's
agreement.
that? Where is that? And they're in the back of the queue. Obama promised that.
That's right. Exactly.
Okay.
That's
All right. But I just don't see it. I mean, it's more of a cultural thing. I mean, he's just so crass. Okay.
American, exactly. Yeah, he's very American. No, no, that's exactly right. Um, but that's the thing. It's these European elites, they are so inserted within this transatlantic gravy train that they see Biden as part of that. And so when Trump comes along and he says that this transatlantic bond is actually harming everybody, we need to sort of unloosen. They're frightened of it because they think, hey, this is going to hurt us. So they would much rather just stick with this transatlantic nonsense, however much it actually hurts their own continent, than somebody who says, well, let's rethink this, which what Trump did, at least in the early part of his administration, like when he thought, let's rethink NATO, let's rethink this alliance. We have our economic issues, you have your economic issues, so let's each of us work out what's advantageous to each of us, rather than stick to this this bond. But but obviously that's not
which at the end of the day is a net a negative for the Europeans. I mean, at least what Trump was proposing is that the harder you work, the more you'll get. Okay, I mean it's a Sinatra doctrine.
Right.
Do it your way. Okay.
Right. No, exactly.
Anyway, this whole the materials that George presented is these people don't understand energy markets at all. It's really quite astounding. I mean, all you have to understand is supply and demand. It's all you need to do in this equation here. Okay.
Exactly.
And who cut off the supply?
Yeah.
I mean, the buyer refused to buy.
Right.
And then the supplier's means of transportation was destroyed.
Right.
So what did you think was going to happen? And then you have American LNG exporters that are just rubbing their hands. Okay, Biden's going to cut down all these other licenses. Oh, this is a gravy train that's going to go on forever for us. I mean, it's so cynical. And everyone at the end of the day ain't going to do one damn thing for the environment, one way or another.
Yeah. No. You're absolutely right. It's going to create shortages, and people make money of shortages. I mean, that's the way it's going to be. And the Europeans are going to have to think, where are we going to get our energy from? I thought we solved that problem 2 years ago. Apparently not.
Think for yourself, folks. Think for yourself. That's why national interest should be your guiding star. How does it help the national interest? Why don't you give Victor Urban a call? He can tell you something about that. Okay. I'm unabashedly pro Urban. I love this guy. Okay. Hate mail, go ahead. Hate on me all you want. That's fine with me. Okay. He's the only European that fights for Europe.
Right. Yeah. No, that's it. And that's really the problem when you get these European elites that have their own agenda, like those which we talked about a moment ago, those EU parliamentarians, all green, begging America to cut back on its LNG exports. I mean, can you imagine the kind of leadership you have here who beg in other countries, why don't you cut back on your energy at a time when their own people are protesting over their energy costs? I mean, but that's the quality of Europe's leadership today.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I know we're going to talk about it, but the green people, you'd think they would support green, but the people that actually support the green are the farmers, and they're the ones being punished here. I mean, something weird going on there.
That's right. Well, we'll talk about that in the next.
We'll talk about that, but this whole energy quagmire that has been created was perfectly predictable. George and I have talked about it for years now. About what was coming about, and it's happened. Okay, we knew this was going to happen. We predicted it, and you have to pay the cost for it, okay? And your people do.
Yeah.
Just because you want to serve American interests to damage Russia. When what is it? When elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers.
That's
Okay,
right.
in Europe, you're the grass.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. This is the Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. This is Friday, so you're gonna have to find something to do until Tuesday when George has his first live stream of the week.
Exactly. 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday. Please join me. Come with comments, criticisms, suggestions, opinions. Everything is welcome. And then think about little Buddy, because Buddy is saying, yeah, there's an energy shortage. And the energy shortage is no one's dipping their hands into their pockets and whipping out coins. There's an lack of energy, depletion of energy. So Buddy's very unhappy. So if you have a few bob in your pocket, whip them out, dunk them in his tip jar. It might satisfy him, probably not. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology, and above all, Buddy will feel a little bit better about energy exports on our part. So remember, if you like the Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.